How coaching turned empathy into weakness. The kindness that once meant something. I have always struggled with the term people-pleasing. It is one of those expressions that has slipped from psychology into popular culture, where its meaning has been cheapened and distorted. In psychological terms, it can describe a set of behaviors often linked to learned safety patterns or early attachment styles. A psychologist might explore it with care, taking time to understand how someone's need to please evolved, and whether it actually causes distress or prevents healthy boundaries. It is not a label that should be dropped into conversation and treated as diagnosis or truth. She was often described as a people pleaser, but I do not believe that is what she truly was. She performed the rituals of one, certainly, but that was part of her empathy, her willingness to give, her instinct to look after others. It was what made her likable, trustworthy, and compassionate. Pleasing others made her feel valued and connected. It gave her purpose. One night stands out. The trains had broken down about 40 minutes from home. She was traveling with a colleague, so I drove down to pick them up. When I arrived, she had struck up a conversation with another stranded passenger. We ended up giving that stranger a lift too, even though it was out of the way. She did not know them beforehand. That was just her. There were countless other moments like that. The gazebo we helped set up for a couple at the cricket, in fact always the first to offer my services. The little boy walking a long way behind his family she thought was lost when in reality he was just being difficult for his parents, so she walked with him until he caught up. The small kindnesses that made up a pattern of who she was. These were not acts of weakness. They were expressions of empathy. Coaching redefined her empathy as dysfunction. When this new way of looking at relationships entered her life, integral leadership and the coaching room, that natural empathy became a problem to fix. The language changed overnight. Suddenly, she was a people pleaser who had lost herself by putting others first. What had been a virtue was rebranded as pathology. But this was not the careful language of psychology. It was ideological. Coaching stripped away context and replaced reflection with slogans. Her use of the term people pleaser came out of the blue, on a day that had already been filled with excuses and rationalizations. It was not introspection. It was a new script, learned and delivered with conviction, to justify a betrayal. In her coaching narrative, she was not describing a behavioral pattern to explore. She was declaring a truth. I had apparently become the reason she could not manifest her dreams. My existence, she said, kept her in the cycle of pleasing me. Coaching gave her a way to recast love as limitation. The distortion of psychological language. The difference between coaching and psychology is critical. Psychology, at its best, does not jump to labels. It examines patterns, causes, and outcomes. It considers history and emotion. Coaching, by contrast, borrows the vocabulary of psychology but strips it of method and ethics. Terms like people pleaser become ideological weapons rather than clinical tools. When a coach tells someone they are a people pleaser, it often means little more than you care too much or you are not putting yourself first. It flatters the ego while condemning empathy. It replaces nuance with certainty. Social media it littered with quotes stating exactly this. It also creates a convenient villain in the story, the person who benefits from your care. That was how the word was used in my case. It was not a discovery but a device. It was not meant to heal but to justify. In the new story she was telling, she was breaking free from a pattern of care that had supposedly held her back, even though the same behavior defined her in every area of life. When love is rewritten as dependency. What coaching did was redefine our interdependence as codependence. Where we had once relied on each other in healthy ways, that dynamic was reframed as unhealthy attachment. Acts of kindness were no longer gestures of love but evidence of dysfunction. She had never viewed empathy as a weakness before. Coaching changed that. It offered her a framework that made separation seem like liberation and caring seem like captivity. By calling herself a people pleaser, she could cast me as the obstacle to her freedom. In that moment, coaching became less about personal growth and more about moral justification. It provided her with a ready-made narrative to rewrite the past, She was not leaving because she had changed, or because she had hurt someone, but because she had found herself. The ideology beneath the label. At the heart of coaching culture lies an ideology of self-interest that masquerades as self-care. It teaches people that personal fulfillment must come before everything else, even empathy. It encourages detachment by turning ordinary human emotions into signs of limitation. This ideology does not emerge from clinical psychology or research. It is born from a market that sells identity and self-liberation as products. Every label becomes an entry point into another program or course. Every flaw is a potential sale. The term people pleaser fits neatly into that system. It reduces complex human behavior to a slogan that can be fixed. It offers instant clarity in exchange for critical thought. The moral confusion of coaching. When coaching language replaces psychological care, it creates moral confusion. It teaches that strength lies in putting yourself first, that boundaries are weapons rather than shared understandings, and that empathy must always be measured against personal return. This way of thinking is seductive because it removes discomfort. You never have to question whether your choices hurt someone else, because you can claim authenticity as the defense. If someone gets wounded, that is their projection, not your responsibility. Yet life does not work that way. Relationships are not neat. They involve compromise, patience, and care. To love is to give without a ledger. Coaching culture, with its fixation on self-actualization, struggles to comprehend that. What gets lost when empathy is rebranded? Looking back, I see how this ideology infected our story. She began to interpret her empathy through a lens of guilt, as if caring for others had been a mistake. I began to question whether my loyalty had made me weak. That is the true cost of coaching language. It takes what was once good and reinterprets it as unhealthy. It tells kind people that their kindness is a problem. It tells partners who stood by through hardship that their devotion is codependence. It leaves everyone doubting their own humanity. In our case, it erased the simple truth that we were interdependent, not codependent. We did things for each other because we cared, not because we were broken. Coaching reduced that reality to a single term and called it transformation. Reclaiming the meaning of care. Empathy is not a flaw. It is a sign of emotional maturity. To care about others, even when there is no reward, is to understand that we are all connected. Perhaps the goal should not be to stop pleasing people, but to remember that pleasing others and pleasing ourselves are not opposites. They are different expressions of the same impulse to belong and to matter. Real growth is not found in rejecting kindness, but in understanding it. It is the ability to give without resentment, to receive without guilt, and to recognize that love, at its best, is mutual dependence freely chosen. Coaching culture would have us believe that freedom lies in isolation. Psychology, when practiced ethically, recognizes that freedom often lies in connection. And life itself shows that empathy, even when it hurts, is what makes us human.